Hi, and welcome to Buildings First View from the Top, a new series where we'll be interviewing some of the industry's biggest names to find out what they think the future for construction holds. We're joined today by Tylor from Balfour Beatty. Thank you very much for coming along, and I want to just start off by asking you what you think the mood is like in the industry at the moment.
I think the mood in the construction industry depends a little bit upon which sector you're in. Those that have been heavily exposed to the public sector at the moment have had quite a good time, but are probably looking forward to things coming off over the next 2 or 3 years. Those that have been heavily exposed to the private sector have had quite a tough time, but of course if you look forward now, you'll see quite a lot of optimism from those people.
And what do you think about this ongoing debate about whether the private sector is going to come back quickly enough to plug the gap that the public sector decline is going to leave?
Well, I think it's very difficult to tell. I mean, calling the exact time on cycles is quite difficult. What we do know is that the public sector spend, particularly in education, is going to fall away over the next 2 to 3 years, not over the next 2 to 3 months. So we know that, but exactly what's going to drive the commercial sector higher is difficult to tell. Certainly there's demand for commercial property and indeed retail, but the reality is that the lack of funding in the banking sector will certainly hold it back, certainly in the short and medium term. So very difficult to tell.
What's the survival strategy then for a company like yours, which focuses very much on public sector work?
Well, the public sector spending has remained very constant over the last 3 to 4 years. Clearly, we have to look to the future. If I look across a 3 to 4 year period, we have a number of things that essentially offset the potential decline in government spending. Yeah, the commercial sector will pick up. We are going to see a significant increase in expenditure in the power sector, whether that's through nuclear or whether that's through other conventional or renewable sources. We are going to see that coming through. And of course, there are many other parts to the Balfour Beatty Group, including our financing capability, our services capability. So we're a pretty broadly spread portfolio. The decline in one sector of our market doesn't cause us to panic.
Last year you said that Balfour Beatty was no longer purely a construction company and actually more of an infrastructure company. Do you still stand by that? And if so, could you elaborate a bit to explain how that might manifest itself through your work?
Well, yes, I mean, it's a very straightforward point. If you take, for example, if you look at the typical sum of the parts valuation of a business like Balfour Beatty, probably less than 40% of what we do, of the value what we are, is in construction. Particularly with the acquisition of Parsons Brinckerhoff, the professional services business last year, and with the continuing growth in our support services, our investment business, we are very much more broadly based than a simple construction business. So it is less than half of what we are.
And you've mentioned the power sector specifically. Could you maybe give a bit more detail on that? And also, are there any other sectors that you're really focusing on, either here in the UK or overseas?
Well, we're looking at markets in a number of areas. We're looking at infrastructure markets more generally in outside our typical geographies, outside the UK and the US. We're certainly looking at some of the opportunities that Parsons Brinckerhoff give us in Australia, in India, in South Africa and places like that. We're looking at whether there are further advances we can make, for example, in water, in the mining sector and things like that. So we're actually looking across quite a broad front.
And you appear to be doing a lot more work in North America now. Could you maybe talk a little bit about that and also about what you're doing in Canada?
Well, no, a big chunk of our business now is in North America, probably a little more than a third of our total business in building construction, in professional services, particularly around transportation. And you're quite right, we've taken the business, and particularly the Parsons Brinckerhoff business that we acquired last year, we've made a further acquisition in 2010 that takes us now into Canada and gives us a foothold there from which we can develop organically.
Canada's an interesting one because it hasn't really been affected as badly as other countries in the recession, has it? So I'm really interested to find out how you're finding it, what you think it's like, what kind of business you're winning out there.
Well, Canada has gone through the pain of fiscal readjustment some while ago, and actually the economy there remains very strong. It's a market, as you say, it's stable. There's a fair amount of activity. It also has a number of similarities to the UK market, not least of which is the existence of a fairly mature PFI market there. We're a small player in that market. There are others who are much bigger than us, but we certainly see significant opportunity as we develop from that small footprint.
It seems very much like survival, for most people anyway, is all about diversification, making sure that you're operating in various different sectors, various different countries, making sure you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. Do you think that companies that are maybe too focused on the UK market are going to suffer?
Well, I think that depends from business to business. We certainly see significant growth opportunities overseas. Some businesses are focusing very heavily in becoming deeper in the UK. Others are looking internationally. For us, the international perspective is one of the drivers of growth for the business in the medium term. But as I say, other companies have very different strategies.
And as the markets change, have you noticed any patterns emerging, say a change in client behaviour?
Well, I think very interestingly, I think the answer to that is no. And actually, it's whether that's surprising or not is an interesting question. Certainly, most of our key clients have maintained a very long-term approach to procurement. They've not responded to sort of short-term changes in the market, and quite rightly too. They've set up their procurement strategies based on some very careful thinking about the way their supply base operates and how they can get the most out of it. And in the main, they haven't been put off by by local and short-term changes in market conditions. So for us, no, we haven't seen any significant change.
Now it's a question that everybody hates. There's a little bit of future gazing, I'm afraid, but I'm really keen to know where you see the industry in 6 months and then also in 3 to 5 years.
Well, 6 months is quite difficult to predict, because for most people that's a very short cycle, and with organisations certainly in our sector that carry a high level of backlog, whatever happens over a 6-month period doesn't actually necessarily have an immediate impact. If I take a 2-year period, my guess, and this is putting together a lot of different strands, my guess is that we're going to see our markets flat over the next couple of years. Certainly we'll see government expenditure coming off, and that is going to take the markets down, but I think the net effect of everything else that we're seeing in the market means that we're not going to see a precipitous decline in activity. I think we are going to see ups and downs, and the net result is that it's going to be a struggle to grow, but we're not going to see the world go backwards.
And are there going to be any specific winners and losers?
Over that same period of time, I think the winners are going to be those, and in a sense it's a statement of the obvious, are going to be those that have the capability and the depth to drive value for customers. And value comes out of the ability to dig in, to innovate, and to generate value and to be there for the longer term. I think those that will lose are those that have to take a short-term view in a market that isn't going to grow.
Can you be any more specific on that? When you say those are going to have to take a short-term view?
Well, I think ultimately in markets that are challenging, and we're all looking for growth, those that have to take a short-term view because of financial constraints and simply have to take a shorter-term view of the relationship with their customers are clearly going to lose out. I have no particular point in mind there. Those, and there are many in the industry with the strength and depth to work with their clients over the longer term, will succeed.
And looking ahead, who would you say are going to be the key players, whether it be companies or individuals, sectors?
Well, I think the construction sector in the UK in particular, if I just take that part of our business, I think the markets there are going to change a little over time. The roles and responsibilities of each part of the market is going to change. Main contractors are going to have to become much better integrators. The supply chain, our supply chain, the subcontractors and particularly our suppliers are going to be winners, I think, because they are the organisations that have the capacity to innovate, and it is that innovation that is going to drive value for customers. Players like us, sitting as a main contractor, have to be a conduit for that innovation to come to our customers.
So what would you say is your main concern then going forward?
Well, my concern is I'm not concerned about the short-term effects in the industry. I do think we've got some pain to go through in some sectors. My real concern is that we as an industry are able to change. Don't forget, industries don't change, companies change, but that the major companies within our sector do change so that we can actually deliver for our customers, and for us that's, for example, the regulated utilities, the public sector. We can deliver the value that they need, because this whole more for less agenda, it's a sort of bit of a buzzword, but it really is important where fiscal constraints and funding constraints are really starting to take away the ability to invest in infrastructure, and we have a real part to play in ensuring that infrastructure is delivered at the lowest cost, because the future growth of the UK economy fundamentally depends on that.
Well, congratulations are in order, as you've just, won Building Magazine's Chief Executive of the Year award, and Balfour Beatty is sort of holding firm at the top of the league and doing great projects, including the one that's just behind you there. So you must be doing something right. What do you think it is? What do you think that the company has, and what do you pride yourself on?
I think in practice, the thing that Balfour Beatty has done well and done best is we have operated within a structure that lets very good people in our industry perform well. We are very much a consensual organisation, and our ability to win work from our customers is down to the quality of the people and that we have through our business, and their ability to take the right decisions to win work, and above all to execute it to the best interests of our customers.
And finally, from your position as Chief Executive of the UK's biggest contractor, what advice would you give to the industry for what is set to be another tough year ahead?
Yeah, our industry needs to focus on flexibility and the delivery of quality. Flexibility is going to be the order of the day. The world is going to change significantly. Our customers are changing. The way they look at the world is going to change radically. If we're going to deliver to them what needs to be delivered, and this industry is very, very important for the UK economy, then we are going to have to be prepared to change and to look at ways of doing things that simply haven't been considered before.